When I was a child, the doctors told me in front of my parents that they should make plans for my funeral. When a person has a disability and that causes them to feel more and more like a victim to their circumstances, it's very difficult for them to rise above that.
How do you channel that anger and that sadness into a positive state of mind?
When we choose the love to drive us, there has to be a purpose to our pain. There has to be a purpose for us to keep going. There has to be a reason why I get up in the morning. If I'm still here, there's something more to do.
If I call you and I say, Warren, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm struggling, I'm angry, I hate everyone, I'm ready to push myself off this cliff. What do you say is the first thing to moving the needle in the other direction? Welcome back to another episode of Who Judges the Judge, the podcast aimed at making you question the way you judge the world around you. Today's guest is incredible. I'm so excited for this interview. I'm here with Warren Falkenstein, better known as Walk with Warren. Warren is just a champion of positivity and using your struggle in order to succeed. And today we're going to talk about what it is like to navigate the world with a serious physical disability, but do so with a smile and nothing but love. Hi, Warren.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
So happy to have you here. Thank you for coming.
I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. I've known you for what? About a year now, I think?
I think more.
Year and a half, couple years?
Couple years, yeah.
And we see each other, we're just chatting how we've never really had like an in-depth, close, personal discussion. Because whenever we see each other, it's at these like massive events, huge parties, DJs, lights, music, drinks, the whole 9 yards. And you show up every time for anyone who asks on crutches and struggling to walk, but smiling through it, and are the first person to offer anyone a hug. Really, it's amazing. So I want to talk a little bit about, your journey through some of the medical issues that you've had and how you get up day after day and navigate this world and do so from a place of such love, grace, and gratitude.
I think you just nailed it right there.
Okay.
It's the love that drives me. It's the love for my people. It's the love for my people that keeps me going.
Wow.
And I think the last event that we had that I hosted together with my army of friends, which I'm very grateful for, that emotion hit me so hard to know that because of when we give love, we get love. And it's not easy. It's not easy to understand that until you experience that. And I do believe that love over fear, love over pain is a way, when we understand that, is a way to overcome the challenges that we're dealing with, especially emotionally and physically. You mentioned about the events. I will share a story that happened recently. I was at an event and I was excited to go. I needed to go. I felt that it was important for me to show up. As always, showing up is a big deal for me. And all of a sudden at the event, my pain level rose to maybe, I have a very high pain tolerance, and it rose until maybe 9 or 10. My feet started swelling up. My hands were swelling. My armpits were sore from the crutches. All of a sudden, my body was just not having it. And the event only just begun, and I wasn't just going to leave. And I kept asking myself, why am I here? What is the reason why I'm here? Because usually when I connect to my faith or myself or anything like that, there's always a bigger picture of why we are, where we are, and what's happening in our world at that given moment. So I kept asking, and I took a break. I went outside. I tried to get some air. I just started heating up. And I'm asking, why am I here? Just show me why I'm here right now, because it's getting really hard. And for me to sit down at an event, just like my people know, if I take an Advil, there's a problem because the tolerance is really high. And I only take it if it's that severe. And I could use one that night. And if I'm looking for an Advil, then there's an issue, right? I didn't know what was happening. So I walk towards the crowd, and all of a sudden there's a man there, a friend of mine. I don't know him that well. Also, we haven't had conversations, but we've seen each other at many events. And all of a sudden, he starts talking and introducing me to a friend of his from a place of love that I didn't even know existed, of what he felt and how much I've inspired him, and all the talks that he's been to, and how he just looks up to me, and how I'm just a being of love that he's never seen before. And hearing this from here, it's not that I needed the recognition, but somebody that I barely even know that well, but shows up every time and has always been around, but never says anything. That was the reason why I was there, to hear that. And he just kept going and going. And I got so emotional just listening to this, because he just needed to share all of that at that moment. And when we show up in our lives, we don't know who we're inspiring, no matter what we're doing. And we're always inspiring and making an impact on another person. And only when the news interviews came out, Fox News, CTV, and ABC, or those news, all of a sudden, more people started reaching out and saying, hey, I was going to jump.
Wow.
And I've been watching your journey and hearing your messages. I know I don't say anything, but I just want you to know that I just want to say thank you. When I'm going through something right now, I think about your struggle. I don't know what it is that you're going through, but I know it's bad and I know it's heavy, but somehow you manage to inspire me and keep going. It helps me to keep going. And that's what helps me to keep going. But I'm not searching for that, but I'm knowing that there are people out there that are watching, that are listening, that are paying attention and not saying anything. And that's one of my reasons why I keep going, because we don't know whose lives we're touching, no matter what it is that we're doing, no matter what field of work, no matter what we're going through. But when we choose the love to drive us, there has to be a purpose to our pain. There has to be a purpose for us to keep going. There has to be a reason why I get up in the morning. If I'm still here, there's something more to do. When I was a child, the doctors told me in front of my parents that they should make plans for my funeral.
How old were you?
I was about, I don't know, early teens or younger.
When did you start struggling, like physically? You have an undiagnosed medical issue. Is that right?
Majority of my life has been undiagnosed.
Wow.
And I'm happy about that, which is weird. But because there's no label. There was no label growing up.
Okay.
So it gave me room to be creative with it in a way that I wasn't confined to a label. Same with anything. As soon as somebody is labeled as this, labeled as that, it becomes that energy. And that energy becomes in your mind. It affects your mind. It affects your whole demeanor. It affects everything. When a person has a disability and they're treated in a way, and their environment treats them in a way that causes them to feel more and more like a victim to their circumstances, it's very difficult for them to rise above that. So I was born fine. There was nothing wrong. It was perfect birth. Everything was fine. And at the age of, let's say, about 18 months or so, started walking a little bit differently. And then all of a sudden, my skin got affected. And back then, it was like 40 years ago or so, doctors didn't know what was going on. So, they did what they knew at the time. You would give a child prednisone, the heavy drugs. And, over time, things just started evolving in a not so pleasant way.
And what did that
scary.
look like to you, let's say as a toddler? Like
scary.
Okay.
It was painful. I don't remember. I remember what I remember.
Right.
Like, we are impacted emotionally by circumstances in our lives. So that when you have that emotional attachment experience or something, that is going to stay as a memory in your subconscious, right? So you're always going to somehow go back to that, whether you're conscious of it or not. So the moments that I felt, it was like the pain, or getting up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden my legs would like tense up, and I would scream, right? Not wanting to wake people up in the night, but I did. I had to. How could I get there in time? Or like the chest pains and headaches, and like from the medications or whatever was going on, and then starting to see like my physical attributes changing, going to school with bandages on my hands, and being different from everybody else. There was bullies, there was this, there was that, and the wheelchair. I spent majority of my life using that wheelchair until I moved back here from, like, I was living here and I was trying to, living here in
So you were
Toronto.
born in Toronto?
No, I was born in South Africa.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
So I don't have the accent, but I can fake it. I guess I can say tomato and,
Okay. So you can pretend accent.
and say hello, how's it? Because my family is South African.
Right. Okay, so you're born in South Africa, and then how old were you when you moved to Toronto?
I was a baby, so I was 83. Same year I was born.
Okay.
I moved here, and then grade 6 or so, I moved to Los Angeles for the weather.
Okay.
For me, because the cold weather affected my condition really badly.
Wow.
And I lived there for about 7 years, and then we moved back.
And while you were in California, was that better for you physically? Were you still in the wheelchair?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So
it was better for you, but it wasn't.
I was
you still had struggles.
Yeah. I mean, the struggles have been always.
Right.
Living in Los Angeles, I was in a wheelchair.
Okay.
My high school friends treated me like everybody else, and I think that played a big part.
Was that good or bad?
That was good.
And they treated you like everyone, like they treated you like someone who wasn't in a wheelchair. They ignored the wheelchair.
No, we had fun with the wheelchair.
Oh,
and I think that's so an important point is that, like, we were talking before about how I got my crutches painted.
Yes.
And painting the crutches brings it life. The person that's pushing the wheelchair, the environment that you're in is going to affect everything, mentally, physically, emotionally. So if you're in the hospital and you're being pushed around in a wheelchair, usually the energy, the feeling is that you're sick, I'm helping you. Mm-hmm. Versus somebody running down the street, pushing your wheelchair as fast as you can, singing and yelling and hoping to God that the wheels don't fall off is fun. And it raises your vibrations, it raises your energy, it gives you life, it gives you hope, it gives you something to look forward to.
Right.
But for me to be able to stand at that event the other night and feel the love from that person talking to me, and to feel my love for the reason why I'm showing up, knowing that something good is going to come from that, obviously showing up responsibly, like I know my limits, right? So when I say show up, I mean, as best as you can under the circumstances. So I was able to, and I did. But I realized that my love right there at standing at that moment, the pain reduced. And there is a way that we can be in a struggle, but be happy at the same time. And I think that is something that I managed to figure out over the past years or so. We can always laugh. We can always smile. We can always raise our serotonin levels. We can always raise something that's to reduce that pain. And meditation plays a big part in that, to calm our system, to get our body back into coherence.
And so let's just unpack the life of Warren for a minute. So you're in California, you're in high school. Are you working as well? No. And so physically, are you in therapy to try to walk? Because I've only known you as walking. I've never seen you in a wheelchair. And so you've obviously at some point put in the work through physiotherapy, through training, through, physical strength in order to be able to walk, which is phenomenal. You spent your entire life in a wheelchair. But in high school, was that, part of what you were doing, or you were just in the wheelchair and just living life like a normal high school student to the best of your abilities?
Both.
Okay.
Both. So I had a little walking stick.
Okay.
And when I was 19, I probably looked like I was 11. And I was twisted and I was shorter. And if you saw before and after pictures, people don't believe it's me. Because when you're hunched over and you're smaller and you're in the chair and you're confined to that, and I had the little stick, it was the whole, you look different, right? When I found out that I was moving back to Toronto, I thought it was the worst thing in the world. My high school life was there, and it was fun. It was exciting. And I was in tears. I was mad. I was upset.
How old were you?
I just started college there. So maybe after high school, it was in 19, 20.
So 18, 19,
something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So you finished high school in LA?
And then I started Santa Monica College.
Okay.
For
Studying
a bit.
what?
I think it was history or some of those courses that you just take until you figure out what you want to do, kind of thing.
And back then, what did you want to do when you grew up? Like 20-year-old Warren, if someone said, what do you want to do for the rest of your life? What would you have said?
I wasn't sure. Like I was more into, I was starting to do some graphic design and things like that back then.
Okay.
So when I moved back here, I went to school for special effects for movies and digital marketing and things like that. Thinking that that was the worst possible thing to come back here to the snow and everything I was terrified. I was sad. I was mad. But as a family, we decided that was the best thing for all of us. That was the biggest lesson for me in the world. Because when I moved back here, maybe a year or so after, I met a guy that lived where we live, like very close to where we live. And he saw me, he didn't speak English, and he just started yelling at some event that we were at. And we were trying to understand what he was saying because it was a foreign language. And he wanted to help me. For some reason, he was there when I was there. And eventually, I went to his studio, which was like 5 minutes from my house. And I started working with him daily and daily. And I also went to the gym maybe like 5 hours a day, every day.
Wow.
So that was the beginning of me graduating from being confined in that chair. And also, I don't like being pushed around. And nobody does, right? So I was stubborn. I was very stubborn because when you're hit by change or an opportunity to change, automatically our self-defenses, our subconscious wants to stop. Like we want to protect ourselves. We don't know what that change is, especially when it's unknown. So he wanted to make my walking stick bigger, and he worked on my posture. It was based on the Alexandra technique, which is used for actors to have more standing upright. And so he had his own version of it, and he worked on my back a lot. And then we kept training and doing different exercises. And eventually I started to grow and started to evolve, started to change, eventually started growing facial hair, things like that. Then he wanted to put me on crutches, and I said, no, right? No, right?
Why?
I was arguing because I was a kid and I was scared. And I'm like, why would I want to be on, like, I don't understand. Because it's not like you're comfortable in your pain, but you are comfortable in your pain. And people don't realize it's like we become what we are and not realize that there's another world out there that we can become, which is going to bring us more joy and happiness. And it's so interesting of how much we resist that when there's change. And we want things to happen in our lives, but we want it our way, but we're not open to seeing like, whoa, this is how it's happening. There's a bigger picture out there. So eventually he started getting me on the crutches, and I started growing more and more. And I went basically from that hole, from this hole all the way down to that one over the years, and started growing upwards. And it just felt, there was a sense of freedom, knowing that like, okay, this is working for me.
What did he say to make you agreeable to try to work towards crutches? So you're in your wheelchair and you're, comfortable in that discomfort because it's what you've known. It's sort of what you've been about your whole life at that point. You said you resisted. He obviously pressed you to try to get you out of the chair and into crutches. What did he say, or what realization did you come to then be open to put in that work? Because that's serious work. That's hard work. It's physical work. It's mental work. We spoke a little bit. My stepdad's an incomplete quadriplegic, and so he had to put in the work in order to be able to walk again when he was first paralyzed. And so there's a lot of failure when you're first trying to make that transition from being in a wheelchair to someone who's ambulatory. You fail a lot, and it takes a lot of mental fortitude to keep pressing in order to achieve that goal. So what did this gentleman say to you that actually clicked, where you were like, okay, I'm going to put in this work? And then every time you failed, and I'm assuming you did, what is it that you thought, okay, I'm not staying in this chair anymore. I've now decided I'm going to work towards crutches. What was it?
There was a language barrier,
right?
But it was his love.
Wow.
It was his conviction that he knew that he could change, that I could change. I think that's what I felt here.
Do you still keep in touch with him?
He passed.
I'm sorry.
He had a stroke and passed away. He was very, very old.
But you stayed in touch with him throughout his life.
As much as I could, yes.
Yes.
And when I was younger, in high school, I trained. I was always, not always, but as I grew older and seeing, my friends are playing basketball and they're doing all these things that I couldn't do, I still had this drive inside of me to try to see what I can do and try to explore the opportunity of what I can. So I was open to different things to try, but I still had resistance. So I trained with a Tai Chi master and Kung Fu champion. His name was Rafi, and he helped me to raise my pain tolerance. The amount of he pushed me past my limits. I was doing push-ups on the floor, sit-ups, and he was making me punch his stomach, but to a point where I was pushing my limits back then. So before I even moved back. And that felt good that I could start to achieve that. I also worked with, he was a Mr. Universe guy that also really wanted to help. See, when you're growing up with a disability and illness, everybody has ideas and suggestions and they want to help you, right? But again, it's like, it could be overwhelming at times. I remember I was in the hospital for like 23 days and there was a lot of suggestions coming my way. And eventually I had to just stop and be like, thank you, I'm grateful, but I need to choose what works for me right now.
Right.
Right. And be able to see, like, it's tough when they all come. But when I worked with Mr. Universe, he did soft tissue work on me. And I was screaming curse words that I didn't even knew that I knew. And it was in our house. And I remember like my family was like, what is happening in there? And his hands were giant. I mean, compared to me, I was a kid, and push them into my body and push my heels against the glutes and try to make it, he was pushing my body, and it was torture. And I did not, obviously the pain, it was painful, but I'm happy I did it because it helped me I needed to go through that also. And it was helpful to release all that tension and everything, but it helped me to have the pain tolerance I have now. And the pain is pain. So we're able to handle the pain that we're given in our life. That I believe. So if somebody bangs their hand on the wall, it's painful. If I bang my hand on the wall, okay, it's painful. The different tone that I'm using here, it's like, it's painful, but it's not as, I don't want to say compare, but we're only able to handle what we're able to handle. So over time, the more that we go through, we're more going to be able to handle more and be more resilient to what it is we're facing. So if I wake up in the morning, like for example, this morning, like my body is saying no, but my mind is saying yes, right? It says, yes, I have something to do. I'm looking forward to something. I'm looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have. Right. I have to get up. Last night, I couldn't sleep till 4 a.m, but that's on me because I had a lot of tea, right? So, I mean, we have the ability for our mind and our body to work together in a way that brings it back to a state of coherence or change that feeling within us that's able to transform pain into love, to transmute it. And when I say love, I don't mean always like, romance and all that stuff. What I mean is that there's a love out there that is the healing. If we are feeling emotionally in despair right now, or we're sad, or we're angry, or whatever it is, we take a moment and pause, or whether it's breathing or whatever, and just close our eyes for a moment. And how would it feel now that I feel amazing? And to keep asking ourselves that to a point where we actually feel it inside. Dr. Joe Dispenza always talks about how our thoughts send the message out there, but our feelings bring it in. So no matter what our goal is in life, whatever feelings or whatever ambitions that we have or whatever pain we're going through, it starts here in our inner world. And when we start to change that, it not just helps us to be more coherent, it helps us to calm our system so our body has the ability to heal, but it helps us to deal with whatever situations come our way in a more proactive way, in a more graceful way, in a more loving way. And the tension around us starts to like come down. And I'm sure and notice like with your clients and wherever you work, it's like if somebody comes aggressively after someone or that they're very reactive or angry, you feel that, right? And when our bodies are angry, they're in pain. And one of the spiritual teachings that I really hold on to is there's this teaching that says, somebody's either coming from a place of love or they're asking for it. So when they're in pain and they're angry, doesn't necessarily mean it's directed specifically at you to take it personally. And when we realize that, then it's like, it's a perspective change. Not sure how we segued here, but
That's okay. It was an interesting path, and I wasn't going to cut you off. But
so
it's true. I mean, I get calls from very, very angry people all the time because they're in jail, and some of them are wrongfully accused of crimes they never committed, and they're in custody. And I let them yell, and I let them vent. I know that sometimes I'm the only person who will answer their calls, and it's sad. I have clients who will literally apologize to me, a week or two or whatever later, and say, "I'm really sorry that I exploded on you like that." Say that it's okay. I can appreciate, even if I haven't been exactly where you're at, I can appreciate where you're coming from. And they'll tell me that they have no one else in their life that will pick up their phone call from jail anymore. And I'm just on the receiving end of that. And I've learned a long time ago to not take that in and to just understand where it's coming from. And so I definitely understand that.
It's very important.
Where
Emotions aren't a bad thing.
No,
they're human.
Absolutely. I don't get angry at someone for doing. I get frustrated with people when they're in better places and still behave disrespectfully. But there's certain lines I won't let people cross. But if it's just someone who's in a really bad place and venting, sometimes they need that. Sometimes you just need someone who isn't going to shun you to be the recipient of that.
We need to express the emotions to release them also. So I'm not saying to hide them. I'm not saying to suppress them, because that's not helpful either.
No.
And when they call you on the phone and they need to let out, they need to let it out, because it's just like it is. When you're in it, you're in it. And yes, once you've let it out, once you've explained what is or identified what is, then we're able to transform it afterwards and deal with the situation and find a way to make it happen. Obviously, context matters, but.
Okay, I want to unpack a little bit about how you get to the place you're in now, which is this incredible, positive, spiritual space that has you having a different understanding and appreciation of what you've been through. Surely that's something you've cultivated over years and not something that you just have, intuitively, I imagine. So you're in your 20s and you're learning how to walk and get out of that wheelchair. How long does that take you? How long does that process take you?
Like you said before, there's failures.
Yes.
And I would still be more dependent on it and using it here and there. I don't remember exactly the timeline.
But like 2 years, 3 years?
Maybe more and more on crutches, the more safer I felt with them.
Okay.
My balance is off. So I need them right now to keep me in balance.
Right. And you were in your 20s?
I think so. It's hard for me to remember the numbers and things like that.
Okay. How old are you today?
I'm 41.
You're 41. Okay. So it's been about 20 years that you've been navigating the world on crutches?
Yeah. I use my wheelchair, airports and long distances here and there, or a wheelchair, right? Okay. But I prefer not to, obviously. But again, it's the energy around it, I think, is important to me, of how and where and why and who, right?
And did you understand all of that in your 20s?
No.
What were your 20s like? You speak a lot about emotion. So emotionally, were you angry? Were you ever... You come from a place of gratitude. Is that something that you've cultivated over the last 20 years? Or is that just who Warren is as a person?
No. Even today, and many people are the same, smile on the outside and they're suffering on the inside. I could be screaming on the inside, but I'm smiling on the outside and I'm standing strong. It's not just for myself, it's for everyone around me, because I know my energy is affecting everybody else. On the other hand, I don't feel comfortable being in the victim mentality for myself or having one. It's more of an empowering, inspiring, but I also have that superhero mentality, right? And I know that, and it's something I'm working on. Maybe it's the Leo in me or whatever it is that just throughout my life, I always felt other people's emotions more than myself. And I think that also affected me as well. It's like I would take it in. And that's probably like, being an empath and all that. So to answer your question, when I was a child, when all of this was getting heavy, let's say around 89, maybe, um, I'm grateful to know that there was a lot of spiritual teachings that came into my life during that time, which helped me to get through the hardest times of my life. And whether it's like mystical or different kinds of spiritual teachings that helped us to see things from a different perspective. And that's where it began. And yes, there's moments where, I could say, am I angry at God or am I angry in general? And yes, growing up in high school, there was times where I was very, very angry and it felt very isolated, even though I had people around me. And you can feel lonely and with people at the same time.
Absolutely.
I know even during the holiday seasons, like it hits me sometimes. Like it just, I don't know why or where. I haven't identified that exactly why, but it just like all of a sudden this like loneliness comes along. But over the years, it's less and less because I realized that, okay, to understand more of that feeling. But I used to heat up. I used to get really, really sad. And being sad and angry, these are emotions and they're beautiful. And we're human and we're supposed to be experiencing these emotions. But we can overcome them in a way that works with us and not against us. So the stress, the anger, the sadness was not good for my health. And I know that now from working with energy healing and working with all these different modalities that I had to experience throughout my life that I got to try. So I get to go through all of this, but I also get to experience the extreme emotions, the pain, the physical pain, all of this stuff, spiritual pain, societal pain. Now I have experienced all this. Now I can help somebody else go through it as well. So when I look at it that way, like, okay, great. Here I am now. I'm still here, but I've experienced this. Now I can help somebody who is just beginning that journey. Not that I wish that on anybody. Of course not. But
No, but that's life. And
that's
there's other
life.
people who are also going to suffer and need someone like you, a mentor that they can turn to and say, okay, how do I embrace this as my point of existence in a way that I can live through with love and with gratitude.
Right.
How do you get to that? How do you get from how do you channel that anger and that sadness into a positive state of mind that you can not only live with for yourself, but inspire anyone and everyone who's struggling with anything, quite frankly, because your message isn't limited, to anyone who's struggling physically. It isn't limited to people in a wheelchair. I mean, really, the messages that you try to deliver to people, you can superimpose on any sort of hardship or struggle. So how do you do that?
Sometimes I ask myself the same question. I do. I ask myself the same question sometimes.
Like, was there a point in your life? Was there a breaking point? Was there a catalyst that some event or some, I don't know, milestone birthday where you're like, fuck this, I'm not gonna be angry anymore. I need to figure out a way that I can embrace living. Like what makes that change for you?
I feel like I cannot afford to be angry. I can be angry and it's good for me to express my anger.
Right.
Or frustration.
But you don't live in it.
But I don't live in it. But I know that it affects me mentally and emotionally and physically, and it affects my health.
When did you realize that?
So I've always been into not always, but most of my life been into self-development. I think most recent was when after high school, started finding, Hay House, Mind Valley, all of these different teachings that start talking about the law of attraction, start talking about our energy, start talking about this and spirituality growing up as well. It's like there's cause and effect and we can change. But then in the spiritual world, some people believe that, there's then there's quantum and then there's the the science is talking about the quantum field and all that stuff and law of attraction and all that. So when I start learning more and more of this, and I've always wanted to speak on stage with Tony Robbins one day. It's always been my number one goal, but I know my energy would not be like him. Like it would be different. It would be me, right? Because I'm more of a subtle, tough love kind of person, right? But I can have the tough love when I'm working with a client or coaching someone. So lately, what I realized is that the more that we take the time to focus on our inner world and to learn different ways and methods for us to transform that feeling of, okay, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling scared right now. Okay, let's just pause for a moment and do maybe a breathing exercise that allows me to calm the vagus nerve, to calm my entire system, and think about how amazing it would be that I just got through that and look back at it as if it already happened and bring that emotion into my life. And now, okay, so now I feel good. Now I can go forward, right? As opposed to walking in a room angry or walking into a doctor's office. That's a perfect example, I think, to answer your question, is that the amount of doctors and clinics that I've been through, I've lost count of. There's not even a point of even trying. But even nowadays, recently, when I go for follow-up appointments at different hospitals, different doctors, different naturopaths, like you're walking into this environment that is going to affect you and your world emotionally and physically. And it's the unknown that we're afraid of. The unknown for me has been the biggest thing, because when you have an undiagnosed disability or illness and you don't know, how do you deal with that?
Right.
It's the unknown that could be scary. But again, when I say there's no label, it helps you to be a bit more creative and be like, okay, there's no label. So I'm not limited by a name. I'm not limited by a thing. Yes, maybe there's no cure, with chronic illnesses or chronic fatigue and things like that. And maybe if there was a name, they would know what to do. However, what helps me the most is the acceptance that there's two paths always. And maybe one day I'll be able to walk without crutches perfectly and fine. Maybe my fingers will grow back. Maybe there'll be some solution, but maybe there won't. And it's my job to be happy with both outcomes. And to get to that point, be like, okay, there is pain right now, and maybe the pain will go away, but maybe it won't. But what can I do to work with it and not against it? And it's important for us to feel the pain in order to heal it. And healing itself can be a perspective of what that healing looks like for the person and what it can be as well. And there's no timeline on healing either. And that's the problem, is that somebody wants things. We grab the Advil right away, right? We grab it like, oh my God, I have a headache. Let's drink the water. Let's go for, I need to go running to of course you got to go to the doctor or the hospital and all that stuff if something's going on.
We live in a world of instant gratification.
Exactly.
Instant gratification. Even knowledge, right? We don't know the answer. We Google. We want to know right away.
Yeah.
So, to hear you say that you've lived for 41 years with an undiagnosed disability, like you don't have a label on it, but you also don't have anyone telling you, okay, this is what's going on. This is what it's caused by. This is what we can do. It's sort of, this is just your state of being and what you have today. And it could change tomorrow in one way or another. And there's no one that can tell you definitively what the next 20 years will look like.
It's for me to decide.
Beautiful. The mental fortitude that you have to just embrace that and not just live, but thrive to the best of your ability is really phenomenal.
Thank you.
It is phenomenal. I mean, I meet people who are constantly of the mindset that they are stuck. And in a lot of ways, and I speak about this openly, the criminal justice system is designed to keep people stuck and rotating through it. But there are always ways to exit. There are always ways to make your way out. You just have to find them, but you also have to be open to finding them, and you have to see them. And you do that with your own circumstance. If someone is listening to this that is struggling, with mental health issues, physical health issues, whatever, and they're moved by what you've been saying, what would you recommend sort of step one in changing your mindset? Because you've given us a lot, right? Come from a place of love, come from a place of gratitude, fill your life with people who are just incredible and supportive and want to be there from you. Show up to the places that you think you have a connection to, and you may not know why you're there, but you'll figure it out by being there, right? Like, you've given us a lot of really incredible messages today for anyone who wants to live a path of positivity and beauty. But what's step one for someone? If I call you and I say, Warren, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm struggling, I'm angry, I hate everyone, I'm ready to push myself off this cliff. What do you say is the first thing to moving the needle in the other direction?
You're still here, and there's a reason for that. And I think it's important that you take a moment to start to find out what that reason is, even if it means you create it for yourself, because your struggle is my struggle, right? And if we realize how connected we are, you're still here, and taking your life is not something that would solve this issue when there's happiness around the corner, possibly for you. And I feel always when we get into that state and imagine, close your eyes and imagine the best case scenario is about to happen. A miracle is about to happen. It's about to, like the greatest thing ever possible. You're going to meet the love of your life tomorrow or in a few minutes. But when our emotional state is in that frame of despair and doubt and negative emotions, not saying negative emotions are bad, but we're kind of delaying that miracle to come our way. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because the more that we do change what's going on in here, the more that these opportunities just start to happen around us. And if you're struggling and you're in it. And I know what it's like, and I know the pain, and I know it feels like there's no way out. But there's like even the eye of a needle, there is like a tiny bit of hope left. Hold on to that, because someone out there needs you right now. And there are people in your life that love you, that need you. And even if it doesn't feel that way, they do. And if you want to take a moment to even, not to attract it, but to imagine how much pain there will be if you did leave this world, how would they feel?
You're a coach?
I am.
And a motivational speaker?
I am.
A 5-time award-winning motivational speaker at that?
I am.
Yeah. If people want to find you for any of these ventures, to have you speak at their events, or they're interested in one-on-one coaching because they want to live life as open and as grateful as you do, how do they find you?
Walkwithwarren.com.
Okay.
And my Instagram.
There's also Walk with Warren.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming here. I really appreciate having you.
Thank you.
Your perspective is really, it's incredible. I know you've taken the last 20 years to learn and teach yourself and grow, and it's a constant battle. You've spoken about that today, and surely we all see it, but what we really see is you showing up and showing up with love. So thank you for doing that today as well. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Warren.
Appreciate it.